Imagine waking up before sunrise, not in a cozy bed, but on cold, damp straw. Your body's sore, your stomach's empty, and the only thing waiting outside that wooden door is another brutal day of backbreaking labor. You're not a warrior, you're not a farmer, you're not even a villager. You're a thrall, a Viking slave. And if you think you could tough it out for 24 hours in that role, think again. Because unless you've got the pain tolerance of a warhorse and the endurance of 10 oxen, you're about to tap out before lunchtime. The Vikings didn't just raid for gold or glory, they raided for people. That monastery they burned down in Northumbria. Sure, they wanted the jeweled goblets and gold crucifixes, but the real prize, the monks, the villagers, the terrified kids hiding behind their parents. Living, breathing loot, human cargo. You see, when a Viking longship pulled up on your peaceful coast, it wasn't just about plunder, it was about stocking up on bodies. Strong backs to row the oars, calloused hands to till the fields, skilled women to weave, cook, or bear children. If you could walk, you could work. If you could scream, you could be sold. And once you were captured, congratulations, you are now a thrall. That's the Old Norse word for slave, and it wasn't just a social label. It was a sentence, a death of identity. You didn't just lose your freedom, you lost your name, your choices, your future. You became a tool with a heartbeat, and this wasn't some rare, unfortunate twist of fate for a handful of unfortunates. Viking slavery was a massive operation. Scholars estimate that at any given time, 20 to 30% of the Viking population were slaves. That's not a minor detail, that's not a subplot. That's the engine that powered Viking society. Who built the farms that fed the raiders? Who patched the sails that took them to war? Who carried the timber, ground the grain, tanned the hides, spun the wool, and cooked the food? The thralls. They were the silent workforce, the backbone beneath the bravado. For every bearded warrior raising a sword in battle, there were 3 thralls back home, making sure he had clothes on his back and bread in his satchel. And here's the part that really twists the knife. It wasn't just foreigners. Oh no, Vikings enslaved their own. Your neighbor gets caught stealing. Boom, he's a thrall. A family falls into debt. They might sell one of their kids into servitude to survive. Born to a thrall mother. That's it. You're in chains from your first breath. And that status didn't vanish when the workday ended. It followed you like a shadow. You couldn't own land. You couldn't marry without permission. You couldn't testify in court. You were legally invisible. A person in shape only, and the dehumanization. That wasn't an unfortunate side effect. It was the point. The system was designed to crush you, to remind you every second of every day that you belonged to someone else. Some thralls were forced to wear iron collars, heavy, rusted, humiliating. Others were tattooed or branded with their owner's mark. You were a living invoice, a receipt with legs. In many cases, they didn't even bother calling you by your real name. Instead, you might be renamed after your job, your looks, or your smell. Imagine spending your entire life being known as dung boy, or limp leg, or useless. That wasn't meant to be funny. That was meant to remind you, you weren't a man or a woman anymore. You were a thing. And because of that, Viking society didn't bat an eye at whipping you, mutilating you, or trading you for a sack of flour. You weren't seen as someone. You were something, a piece of wealth, a status symbol, something to flaunt, to break, or to discard. And it gets darker, because the Viking economy didn't just benefit from slavery, it depended on it. Entire trade routes, stretching from Dublin to Constantinople, trafficked in human lives. Raiding wasn't just warfare, it was supply chain management. Take slaves from the west, sell them to the east, use the silver to buy silk, spices, and steel, rinse, repeat. The biggest markets? Birka, Hedeby, Kaupang, and Dublin. These weren't just town squares, they were medieval supercenters where you could buy tools, horses, weapons, and people. Right out in the open. Like livestock or fish, there are records of thralls being bartered for weapons, livestock, or even half a ship. Depending on how young, strong, or fertile they were. Yes, fertility was a selling point. Because a female thrall who could bear children. That was self-replicating capital. 1 slave becomes 2, 2 become 4, and each one's birth is just more profit for the master. There were no off days, no protection, no escape clause. The world of the Viking thrall was a world without light. You want to know what your day as a Viking slave looks like? It starts in the dark, before the sun, before the roosters, before anyone with a name and a title even rolls over in their bed. You're already outside, soaked to the bone in the kind of cold that cracks skin and stiffens joints. And it doesn't matter if it's snowing sideways or raining needles. Your job doesn't care. Nature doesn't get you a sick day. Your first task, hauling water from the river back and forth in splintered wooden buckets that dig into your hands like knives. Or maybe you're chopping firewood with an axe, so dull it might as well be a butter knife taped to a stick. And you're barefoot, because shoes. Yeah, those are for people with choices, people with freedom. Then it's off to the fields. No tractors, no wheelbarrows, just you, a crude tool and a patch of frozen earth that's been beaten harder than you have. Plowing, planting or harvesting, depending on the season, all by hand, all day. You're bent over for hours, lifting, digging, sweating, freezing, starving. All for a bowl of thin barley gruel, if you're lucky. No meat, no milk, just a slurry that tastes like wet paper and keeps you upright until sundown. No gloves, no breaks, no mercy. And maybe you think, okay, surely they ease up after a while, throw you a bone, let you rest. Nope, you don't get kindness, you get commands. Because you're not a guest in this society, you're a tool with a pulse, a talking shovel. You don't speak unless you're spoken to. You don't eat unless you're told to. You don't sit unless the work is done, which it never is. And if you slip up, if you break something, say the wrong thing, or even look the wrong way, the punishment? Absolutely brutal. Some got whipped until their backs looked like torn leather. Others were branded with hot iron, ownership tattoos that never faded. And if you really messed up, you might lose a hand, or a tongue, or your life. Not because they wanted to kill you, but because they wanted to make an example out of you. There is no HR department in Viking Age Scandinavia. There's no complaint form, no second chances, just pain and silence. Now maybe you're thinking, all right, worst case scenario, I get lucky. Maybe I get assigned a cushy job indoors. Sure, that's technically possible. If you're a woman, you might end up working in the longhouse, cooking, weaving, cleaning, tending to the children. It's warmer, drier, no plowing fields or hauling logs. And if your mistress isn't completely heartless, you might even get some scraps from the table. Maybe a crust of bread. Maybe a bone with some meat still clinging to it. But don't let the hearth fool you, because here's the ugly truth. Viking female slaves were often subject to sexual exploitation. And there was no escape, no refuge, no say. You weren't just cleaning the house, you were part of it, owned. Like the furniture, like the animals. And if your master wanted you for something more than scrubbing floors, that was it. No one was stopping him. You weren't protected by any law. You weren't considered a victim. You weren't even seen as a woman in distress. You were property, and if you got pregnant, that child didn't bring freedom. That child was just more property. Born into slavery, raised into servitude. Just another mouth that would grow into another back to break. Viking society had laws about land ownership, sheep stealing, even duels over insults. But when it came to thralls, you weren't a person. You were somewhere between a goat and a broomstick, and you were treated accordingly. Now let's say you're strong, you're useful. Maybe your master sees potential in you. Lucky you, right? Think again. You might get chained to a ship's oar, rowing for hours on end through freezing water no matter how choppy the sea gets. Your wrists are raw, your back is splitting, and the only thing keeping you from being thrown overboard is your rowing rhythm. Fall out of sync. You're dragging the entire crew, and trust me, they'll notice. And if you're chosen to build fortifications or haul stone for a massive longhouse, hope you enjoy 14-hour shifts, lifting boulders without the help of modern scaffolding or machinery. One slip, you're crushed, and no one's stopping to mourn you. They'll just toss your body in a ditch and grab another slave to take your place. Now here's something you probably didn't know. Viking thralls were branded, not metaphorically, literally, burned or marked with iron so there was no mistaking your status. That scar on your arm, that's not a tattoo. That's a warning to everyone around you. This one is owned. Do not help, do not hide, do not trust. And there's no legal escape hatch either. You can't sue, you can't flee. And if you do try to run, every villager, every guard, every dog in the region is trained to bring you down. Because slaves weren't just property, they were expensive property, and nobody likes losing their investment. Now maybe, just maybe, you survived the day. You didn't get beaten, your fingers are still attached, and you didn't collapse in the fields. You shuffle back to your shed, not a room, not a cabin, a shed, no fire, no warmth, just darkness, dirt, and maybe some lice-ridden straw to curl up in. Your hands are blistered, your feet are cracked, and you haven't even made it through one day. Imagine doing this for years. And before you start fantasizing about earning your freedom, yeah, that was technically possible. In rare cases, a thrall could buy their way out. But considering you were paid nothing, owned nothing, and spent every hour working someone else's land, good luck with that. Some slaves were freed in wills, others were released when their master died. But for most, death was the only true exit. What's really brutal about all this is how normalized it was. Viking society didn't see slavery as cruel or evil. It was just part of life. Owning thralls was a status symbol. The more slaves you had, the more powerful you were. Even the language reflected it. Free men were called carls, nobles were jarls, and thralls, just that, thralls. Not people, not citizens, just bodies to be used, sold, and discarded. And the slave trade, it was booming. Vikings captured people from Ireland, Scotland, England, the Baltic, and even Eastern Europe. Slaves were sold at markets in Dublin, Hedeby, and Birka. Human trafficking wasn't a dirty secret. It was a full-blown business. So yeah, you think you could last 24 hours as a Viking slave? Try living in a society where you have no rights, no rest, and no control over your own body. Where one bad mood from your master could get you killed. Where your name could be stripped from you and replaced with something like Blacktooth or Stinky. Where the only thing you have to look forward to is the next sunrise, if it ever comes. Like this harsh reality check. Then go ahead, smash that like button like a Viking smashes an oar on your back. Leave a comment if your jaw just hit the floor. And if you want more brutal, raw, and fascinating history lessons, make sure to subscribe, because next time, we're diving into something even darker. And trust me, you don't want to miss it.